Welcome to the Millennial and a Boomer Walk into a Coffee Bar podcast.
The very best podcast to get your life advice in the form of a grande caramel macchiato in a venti cup, 1/3 whole milk, 1/3 almond milk, 1/3 soy milk, double the amount of vanilla syrup, caramel wall in the cup, no caramel drizzle on top, upside down, of course, tall ice cup, whipped cream, rounded lid, one shot extra espresso, decaf, cinnamon sprinkled on the top, and for the name, that's David, spelled Dafydd, please.
Or to get your business, finance, and life support black coffee advice, I'm Dan, I'm a Boomer.
And I'm Chase, the Millennial. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, welcome back, Chase. Another opportunity to go through some generational differences. We're talking about Gen Z. And if you listen to our last podcast, it gave a little bit of the background, who they are, what years they are, what their pros, what their cons are, and where we need to learn to be able to, I'll say it this way, tolerate them, but that's a strong word from a boomer, right? So we're going to actually take a little bit of in deeper dive into Gen Z folks today.
Yep. And as we do so, I just want to thank Mommy Nature, who left us a comment on our podcast. Great, engaging podcast. Such a fun concept. A boomer and a millennial team up to provide both ends of the working and relationship experience and share their wisdom with one another. And luckily, the listener, us. They have a charming dynamic that's fun to listen to, as well as great tips. They engage you to feel like you're sitting right there with them. Highly recommend. So, Mommy Nature, thanks for that comment.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's because of our great jokes why the people keep coming back. That's definitely good.
I don't. And, even the detail and the context, I think there's some really good stuff there. But it's fun. It's fun. I wouldn't even call this working with you. We get no compensation whatsoever.
But we could. If you want a mug, you can let us know. Partner at firstconnect.com.
This thing, I was sitting there thinking how much this costs us. And it's like...
well, we paid for that. We paid for that. We paid for that. We paid for that. Pay for that.
But we drink coffee, and it's not for free, but we pay for the coffee anyway. So
yeah.
Anyway, start us off with introduction to Gen Z humor.
This one's a classic because if you caught our last episode where we lost basically half the country, we talked about saving the planet. And so my joke is going along those lines. Gen Z might save the planet someday, right after they find that perfect "I'm saving the planet" Instagram filter.
Now that's funny because I even get that one. So that's good. So anyway, we're going to take it. You learned all about what Gen Z are, who they are, what they think, how they act, what they stress about. And now we're going to talk about what employers think about Gen Z, and it's ugly. It's not a good situation right now.
Specifically for Gen Zers.
Well, and for employers too.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you, employers are on a Gen Z firing spree.
Ooh, now firing. Now, you didn't say hiring. You said firing.
Firing with the starts with an F, right? I mean, you're fired. That's my Donald Trump. My Donald Trump, and I need a little. Yeah. Anyway, and these are brand new employees. Mm-hmm. They're letting brand new Gen Z employees go, sometimes only after a couple of short months that they've been on the payroll with these guys. So
some in weeks, I read.
Yeah, and we need to jump into this because it doesn't look good for Gen Z. Let's find out, because I'm sure a lot of these people that are firing them are boomers. And I'm finding out they're probably millennials. Yeah. And so what's going on here? Let's dig into this because 6 in 10 companies that hired fresh college graduates this year have already sent them packing.
This year, 2024.
2024.
This year.
Recent data, recent article, And it is data and it is information. We didn't make this up. We didn't drink too much coffee and say, how are we going to mess with the Gen Z? They've done it to themselves. So let's dig into this. Why in the world are these kids getting fired?
Well, we're going to share the link to this article in the show notes. So if you want to read further beyond what we talk about,
that's a good idea.
You'll have the access to do that. So here's what we're hearing. And I hear this both in the article, but I hear this. I'm in several different like business owner groups and management groups and, like leadership things, all this stuff, right? You hear it all the time. We're firing these kids, not because they're not smart.
Right.
They've got the piece of paper that says they know how to do X, Y, or Z.
All the credentials they've got.
They've got it. But we're firing them because they're unprepared. They're unprepared for the workforce. And there's a big difference between being smart and having credentials and being prepared for the workforce.
I really believe they're showing up to work and they just don't have the basic skills to handle a real world job. And employers are tired of dealing with it. Now, let's look at where the problem lies to some extent.
Boomers. Oh, sorry. You continue.
Boomer. I'm afraid that we've done this to a lot of these people, and we'll get into a little bit how they turned out to be that way, but they're just not ready to do the basics of a work and a workplace because they've not been trained to do it. They can get all the educational experience and they can get the credentials and the sheepskin. You guys still call a college diploma a sheepskin?
Negative, Ghost Rider. Never heard that. We have invented paper since then. So,
that's right. We etched it into the goat skin after we cured the hide. Okay, but anyway, they've got the credentials, but when they get out there, they just can't deliver on what it takes to be a valued employee.
And it's really interesting because, and we're going to jump into the blame thing in a second, but what I'm hearing is even though these kids have the ability to complete the job, the number one biggest issue that a lot of people, now I'm talking only specifically here in DFW, the number one issue is these kids are not solving basic problems. They hit a wall. They didn't teach me this in a textbook. They have no idea how to solve that problem. Yeah. None.
Well, and I'll say it this way, the same thing a little bit different is they think that the world owes them. They're not out there to be problem solvers. And you told me this the other day, we were sitting around. You can either be a consumer or a creator. Mm-hmm. And these guys are consumers. I got. And they have been taught that the world owes them something. They're brilliant. They're good. Oh, you're a poor little baby. The world will take care of you. Well, the world will spit you out if you're not mentally prepared and emotionally prepared as well.
Well, we know that the world has spit out 6 out of 10, so learning the hard way.
This is real data. The real world does not hand out participation trophies.
Yeah.
Your boomer coach or your boomer grandfather that gave you, oh, that's all right, Sonny. That's not the way the real world is. In the business world, you produce or you're out.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at with this. So employees don't owe their employees. Let me say, employers don't owe their employees anything but fair compensation for a job well done. And there's expectations associated with that. And a lot of the Gen Z people say, that's your expectations. That's not what I'm here to deliver.
This is interesting. As a business owner, I've learned a lot of really interesting things about this.
Yeah.
When millennials were coming into the workforce, the big thing was like all the tech companies would give you scooters to ride in between buildings on campuses. They'd have ping pong tables. They had all these extra things to incentivize them to come to work, right? They're not owed. Employees are not owed all those extras. Here's where it gets really wild to me. As a business owner, I'm not required in some states to provide basics. Like we would think basics like workers' comp. Some states don't require you to provide workers' comp. You're not required as a business to provide insurance. You're not required as a business to provide a 401k. Those are extras in some places. And So yes, as we're talking here, right? You don't owe them anything but fair compensation for a job well done. That's it.
Yep.
And that's an interesting thing to think through, because you always think, well, they owe me my time off. Did you know you're not required in the United States of America to provide any time off?
I didn't know that. I thought there was some OSHA or
There
some
are
government mandates that say for 4 hours worked, you had to give them 30 minutes off.
So you do have to give them breaks. You do
Oh.
not have to provide them with
Oh, my
PTO.
time. Oh, glad for that clarification.
Yeah, interesting.
Wow.
So,
Oh.
make sure you know the rules before you start shooting your mouth off about what's expected,
Right.
because
Well, and
Mhm.
it's employers are not required by law to allow you to work from home. I know that's where I'm hanging my hat, and I know this remote working that's not a requirement. And so if you want to have a job like that, they're specifically asked that question. But you can't take a job that you're expected to show up to be compensated fairly and say, I'm not going to show up. But 3 out of 4 employers say their new hires simply aren't cutting it. And here's a couple of things. They show up late. They say, oh, that's a start time for the boomers. That's not a start time for me. And they lack initiative. So these are just a couple of things. And then another one is they lack professionalism. These are 3 things that you really ought to really pay attention to. Be there, be on time, meet the expectations, work hard for what you're compensated for. Don't think you should get more than what your agreement and your compensation is for. And then be professional about it. Dress professional, act professional, have language appropriate professional, things like that.
yeah, it's the professional thing is really interesting, because what's professional to a millennial and a boomer from a dress perspective, we've already talked about that on the podcast. It's different.
Yeah.
Your expectation is like sport coat or tie and button up shirt, where millennials are like, yeah, I'm going to wear like my fancy jeans and my really nice t-shirt with no logos on it. And they would say that's professional to them. And in some work offices, that's what's expected, and that's fine. But what I think we're talking about here is a different level of professional, not just how you look, but how you're a representative of the company.
Right.
And if you go in front of a client or a customer and you're using slang words or derogatory words, like you're not being professional, or if you tip your hand from the business perspective too much in front of a client or customer, that's not professional.
Right.
There's a certain information that the company doesn't want shared outside of the company. And so a lot of times they're just like, well, I have this information, I'm going to spout it off in this meeting.
You need to protect the brand of the company, and usually the owners or the management or the administration set what that brand is and the minimum expectations. And I tell you, I've looked at a lot of HR benefit books and behavior, and how many days off, and what about posting on social media, and there's a whole gamut. There's a lot of companies that are casual, and there's a big difference between business casual for you and business casual for me. But understand what those expectations are and meet the minimum that you're compensated for. And to get a little bit ahead, exceed those requirements, right?
Yep.
But right now, Gen Z hiring pool is turning out to be a bigger risk than a potential benefit to a lot of these employers. And that's a huge problem.
Mm-hmm. It is. And I wouldn't say it's all the kids' fault.
Yeah.
So let's look at what's happened. We've raised the generation with a culture. Here we go again. You know how I feel about culture. It's broken. We've raised them with a culture that values the feelings over the facts, rewards effort over results. Those are not the same thing.
Those are not the same things. And this has become blurred for Gen Zers because I'm sorry, but if you're late for work, I'm not going to give a darn about your feelings. I'm going to tell you, you were late for work and that's unacceptable, and you better get it together or there's the door. And I don't really care about how hard you work. Let's see results, right? Now, there's a lot of difference between we do a lot of things very, very well that they didn't need to be done at all in business. We work really hard at stuff. So you got to be able to figure out what that is and be able to think for yourself, right? To be able to think like the businessman, I'm getting compensated for this. I need to deliver results, and they don't really care about my feelings. So pay attention to all three of those things.
Yeah, let's use a real world example. We hired an intern at my company, and we laid out here's what we want. We want you to create this presentation that goes over your internship. Now you're at the end of your internship. We want to know X, Y, and Z. So we laid out, yes, we want some satisfaction. How did you feel about it? But also, what things did you accomplish?
Right.
And we got to that meeting, and the entire presentation was beautiful. It was a really nice PowerPoint with absolutely zero data in it. And, I don't care how much effort you put into it. That's not what I asked for. I asked for very specific data points, and I wanted to know exactly what the data said. And you failed to include it. Now that's a big failure on my part.
Yep. And there's, don't mix effort with results, because you can have a beautiful presentation that doesn't say anything. And that's kind of what you really came across. And honestly, like you said, it's not the kid's fault, but that's what happens when you raise a generation in a culture that values feelings over facts and results over effort. No,
Effort
over results.
Yeah. Yep. And so what happens? They hit the workforce, reality smacks them in the face, and they're not ready for it. How do we know? Because they got fired.
Yeah.
6 out of 10 of them. So it's not just degrees that company are looking for anymore. It's so much more than just a piece of paper. And to be fair, there's a lot of companies who have stopped asking for the piece of paper over the last 10 years. Google no longer requires a piece of paper because they realized I would rather have someone who doesn't have a piece of paper but has the soft skills to be a good team member, that has the ability, the grit to get the job done, that has like all these other things more than the piece of paper. And that's interesting because Google's a very technical place, right? It's not just like, I'm going to go build a widget every day. No, you're building this behemoth organization.
A lot of these skills that are lacking aren't taught in a classroom. In fact, I'll go as far as saying a lot of these are taught by parents, by peers, by school teachers and things like that. But I think parents should be instituting a lot of these things instead of letting them slide by and say, oh, it's okay, you're still a winner in my book. They haven't been taught the essential, I'll call them non-academic skills, and they are skills and they need to be practiced.
Yeah. So that's actually something that comes up frequently. So we started a micro school this year here in Frisco, Texas. It's for grades K through 12. And a parent came to me and asked at one of the info sessions, they said, hey, at what point, they were asking at what point they can just drop their kids off and we'll educate them. And I said, oh, hold on. We're not a replacement for you. This is your responsibility to educate and to raise your kids. You're viewing us as something that you offload your kids onto. But the truth is, we're a tool in your tool belt. You're still the one responsible for your kids. We just want to use our abilities and processes and instructional design to help you. But at the end of the day, your kid is a direct reflection of your efforts into their life. Right. And the problem that we see is most parents offload the education portion to the local school, and then they offload the spiritual portion to their local church instead of saying, wait, this is my job. What tools are out there and available to me to use as I raise my kid? That's a big problem, is they've just offloaded everything.
So I'm on the hunt here. Who are the parents of Gen Z? What generation is the parents of Gen Z? I'm a parent of obviously a millennial, an aged millennial, as you so frequently, but who are the parents of Gen Z? It's not millennials. It's
the Gen X. Because if you remember, the majority of Gen X, that's the first generation where they started waiting to get married and waiting to have kids. And so these are in a lot of instances, Gen X parents that waited to get married until their mid-30s, early 40s, and now they're having kids.
Interesting. Yeah. We ought to go after the Gen Xers, because it's funny. The next couple of podcasts are going to be, there's some Gen X detail and information in there and all that. But they just haven't been taught a lot of these things. And I think it's by their parents, right? Companies want people who are going to show up, be ready, hustle, take the initiative, and actually have the grit to do hard things. If I could sum up going and working for a company, I would sum it up in one word: curiosity. How does that work? How do I get that done? How do I overcome this hard task? How do I, and be curious about that. We've lost our curiosity.
Yeah.
and I
Why
think
do we
that's a
do it
big
that
thing.
way?
Why? Exactly.
Yeah.
Is that the best way to do it? And is that the only way to do it? And I think that would help in the generational differences is that one word is curiosity.
Yep. Yeah. Well, there's a great book that we've read our kids. You've probably read this book to my kids. It's called The Tuttle Twins and the Medals of Merit. And they really teach the kids the value of merit, right? Earning your success rather than expecting it to be handed to you.
Right.
And these are great books. My kids love them. They've got some pictures, but they've also got some really heavy, deep, in your face topics
Blunt.
presented in a very friendly way for
Exactly.
young kiddos.
Exactly. Merit matters, whether you're showing them that hard work and determination and personal responsibility, that's the way, and those are the keys to really do well and accomplish things in the real world. It's not going to come for free. You got to do something to get something, and merit matters. Hey, I earned that. A lot of times when you say, "Oh, I graduated from college," I earned that degree. I didn't. It wasn't handed to me in a lot of instances. Can you say that same thing about your paycheck? I earned that paycheck. Can you say the same thing about your employees' recognition of your work? I earned that. And that's back to the basics.
Yep. And that goes beyond just doing the bare minimum, right? That's going to separate. If you as a Gen Zer want to separate yourself from the pack, don't just do the bare minimum. Just go a little bit above and beyond, and you will look wildly different compared to the average. Interesting. So there's business leaders out there who are talking about this. What are they saying?
Attitude is more important than a degree. If you come in with a cooperative attitude, a collaborative attitude, a good attitude, a questioning attitude, that's more important than any sheepskin that you're ever going to get from a college or a university or even a trade school. It has a lot to do with your influence on the businesses. Companies want people who will work hard, take the initiative, bring a positive energy to their team, and at the very least, they want people who will make eye contact with them when you're chatting with them. And even some of these things where people will even look down, these are the basics. They need to be able to communicate in professional language. And these are the people that, hey, I don't want 3 raises. I remember when you came in as an intern and you said, hey, when do I get a walled office? Boy, it took me 20 years to get a walled office. Before that, I was in a cubicle or even working on the concrete floor. You can't get 3 raises in your first year for simply showing up. Guess what? You can get merit and earned raises for delivering on those things. So,
yep. And it's just painfully missing in today's young adults, these kids coming out of college. Parents teach their kids that they're capable of achieving great things, but only if they're willing to put in the effort and earn it will that be realized. So it's not just about, oh, you can do whatever you want. Are you willing to do what it takes to get there? Because we live in America. This is still one of the greatest places on this entire earth to do whatever it is that you want to do. But you've got to put the work and the effort into it.
let me just say this. If you're one of those 6 people out of 8 that got fired, I hope you're learning your lesson, because we can say this is a painful lesson for you to learn. And I'm afraid that some of these people that were the 6 of the 8 blame the employer for getting fired.
Yeah.
Recognize it, realize it, and own it, and start to do things. And parents, teach your kids the difference, right? Teach your kids to achieve great things by sweat of your brow, and not that it's earned to me. But you got to learn that lesson. Sometimes it's a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah. And we We want you still to get to the top. So learn from it and let's get you back to the top through hard work, wisdom, not doing the same thing twice in a row. Like,
Exactly.
let's not get fired twice for the
Exactly.
same thing. Anyway, so what did old Thomas Edison say about this?
Opportunity is missed by most people because it is dressed in overalls and looks like hard work.
That's so true.
That's a brilliant thing, actually.
Yeah.
That is a really good thing, because Thomas Edison would be one of those guys that would spend a lot of time in his lab and work until something was delivered. Isn't that the truth? That work always looks like it's not necessarily a lot of. If you're a podcaster or an influencer and you have a good time doing it, good on you. But I'll tell you, reward for the company before personal reward, and they come together and they actually do that. Mediocrity is not dead. It's just been forgotten. Mm-hmm. And in a world that values shortcuts and entitlement, and you're going to get there faster and all that, that's never going to be pushed out of the way for someone who really rolls up their sleeves and works hard.
Yep. So we have some good news. We have time to help the generations coming up, right?
We do.
Whether kids or grandkids, we want to help them avoid those pitfalls that are plaguing the Gen Zers, 6 out of 10 of them at least. So we've got a couple of things that we should do for these students. What should we do for these kiddos?
Teach your kids the value of hard work. You shouldn't get an allowance because, hey, that's what parents do to give for their kids. You should have some responsibility that they have to deliver on to get there. So teach them that if you do this, you'll get that. If you don't do this, you won't get that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, getting them involved in real world activities where they can experience those satisfaction of earning something.
You take better care of things that you earned than those that were given to you. That's just a nature. If someone gifts you something, yeah, that's pretty cool. And yeah, I got it. And maybe you can treasure it. But if you work hard and you earn something, you're going to take better care of it that way.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Also, show them that success comes from effort and initiative, not for waiting things to be handed to you.
Yep. Don't expect a handout. Earn it and make it happen. And you can make it happen. And oftentimes you'll get better and more than what you would than if you sit back and wait. You know, employees are desperate for people who understand this, and they'll reward you for that. Gen Zers, if you can be one of those that guts it out, adds to it, delivers more than what they receive, you'll be leaps and bounds ahead of them. But please, please, please teach your children to do the same thing as you start to have kids, and you can influence them at that part.
Yep.
There's
and
one lesson.
One lesson.
What is that lesson?
If you could teach your kids anything, let them fail.
Absolutely.
Let them fail.
Absolutely.
We've gotten to the point where the sports that they start, right? We started kids in sports young so they can learn how to win and how to lose and all these different things. We've gotten to the point now where the sports, we don't even keep score anymore. What? What's the point of playing?
I know.
What's the point? And so they get to then high school and we've stopped giving grades. What? How do we know if they're learning? And then we get them into their careers and the boss says, yeah, you're 1 of 6, buddy. Sorry.
Yeah.
See ya. Gotta go.
Hit the door.
And it destroys them because they've never lost before. And now you're setting them up for huge failure in life because now they're a failure instead of they had a failing moment.
Exactly.
Big difference between those
And,
two.
you know, we as parents think, wow, we're merciful or we're protecting our children by not allowing them to fail. You're doing a disservice to your children by not allowing them to fail. It robs them of vital lessons that will help shape them and help shape their existence and their careers in the way that they play, in the way that they work and earn and live. Mm-hmm. If you don't let them learn by failure, it's a big deal. It's a real big deal.
I mean, success and failure are 2 ends of the spectrum, right? It's not like it's somewhere in the middle on either. No, you either succeeded and you achieved what you were shooting for, or you didn't.
Yeah.
And if all you ever do is achieve based on nothing, when you get to that point, you've lost that elasticity in life where you can bounce back.
Right.
And if they're never failing before they get to be an adult, it cripples. How many people have we seen? It just absolutely cripples them, and they don't know what to do.
They don't know what to do. They're gabsmacked or whatever the British
Gabsmacked.
say. Now we've lost our British listeners, but gobsmacked or whatever. But I tell you too, if you're a coach in today's environment, teach them to be a good winner, a good loser. Teach them that winning is important. Teach them that losing is an important life lesson, but also teach them to play hard and do their very best. Teach them to be a good citizen, not just to be a good football player or a hockey player. Teach them to have respect for authority and referees and, things like that. That's where we can teach our kid. If you're going to be a coach, if you're going to be a parent, teach them that, you know what, it's not the best to lose, but occasionally it's going to happen. Take it like a man.
Take it like a man.
Or well, if we say take it like a man, we just lost 50% of our viewers, the ladies. So
I don't know. Well, we probably lost everyone. It's probably just the two of us, but we're having a good time doing it.
We
so.
are doing it. And if I could get my wife to listen to a podcast, that'd be a major coup. So anyway, we just heard back from our special guest. I don't know if you saw
While we've
that.
been recording.
And that's way cool. She said, I would be honored to represent the Gen Z people in your podcast. So home run. You sent it out. The person accepted. So keep listening, because we just talked a little bit about Gen Z. Unfortunately, the bad part of Gen Z, she's going to be here to defend her people. And maybe that's a bad way to put it, but
Defend her people. She'll probably come in with like a sword and a shield, defend the tradition.
That's right. So, but anyway, we're learning that sometimes different can be bad, sometimes different can be good. But just remember, just because it is different
Doesn't mean it's wrong.
have a great afternoon.
See y'all.